NASA says that right now is an amazing and fundamental opportunity to focus on the planet Venus. This follows the recent discovery of possible life there. If you somehow ended up exploring NASA's records from the 1960s, you'd see the space agency referring to Venus as a planet of judgment. Meanwhile, Mars became our primary objective. Such careful naming of the essential planets wasn't conventional during the wild space race period. The Soviet Union was focused on sending missions to Venus. The mysterious planet showed virtually no potential for life, yet the Soviet space program didn't decommission the Venera program until the fall of the USSR. Thanks to Neil deGrasse Tyson, we finally understand why. Join us as we examine the declassified photos from Venus taken by the Soviet Union. The fall of the Soviet Union was monumental in many ways. Not only did it shift the global balance, but the collapse of the USSR also unveiled various insider secrets. The Soviets were known for maintaining secrecy, from running the most covert intelligence agency in the world to being vague about their true capabilities. It has been suggested that extraterrestrial contact might have been one of those secrets. The former superpower holds many untold stories. Before the U.S. dominated planetary missions, the Soviet Union led the way. The USSR had a long history of both successful and failed space missions, but its most notable focus was on the highly hostile planet Venus. In Russian, Venus is called Venera, the name of the mission that ran from 1961 to 1983. During the same period, the U.S. was busy with its missions to the moon. In a way, the Soviets chose to use their resources differently. Why was there such an obsession with the second planet from the Sun? Did the Soviets plan to use the planet's surface as a potential power station or hope to colonize it? The question remains, why were they so focused on this harsh planet? During the Cold War, they weren't completely open about their goals. In fact, everything we know about the Venus missions comes from declassified and unarchived information. The Soviets didn't land on Venus just once or twice. They did so repeatedly. The USSR launched 28 rockets toward the planet. 13 entered Venus's atmosphere, and 8 actually landed. These complex missions placed the Soviets in a leading position in space exploration. The U.S. was a close second. But NASA was more focused on satellites and advanced technology than on finding life on other planets. Their attention was on Mars, which wasn't an unusual or poor choice. Your history books may not highlight this, but the Soviet space program was the first to send a probe into the atmosphere of another planet. They achieved several firsts. The USSR was the first country to achieve a soft landing on another planet and to return images and sounds from its surface. The Soviets had their own one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind moment long before the U.S. So, why don't we hear much about these achievements? Remember what we said about the Soviet tendency for secrecy? That's one explanation. After the USSR collapsed in 1992, the prominent space program was decommissioned, and many original records were lost or destroyed. This is why we don't have a clear answer about why the Soviets launched 28 rockets into Venus's atmosphere. However, we can reasonably assume that the Soviet focus on Venus was partly about cost-effectiveness. This doesn't mean they didn't see Venus's scientific potential. They were looking for water levels, solar radiation, and other planetary characteristics. Without these missions, assessing Venus's extreme conditions, like its high temperatures and dense atmosphere, would have been much harder. Today, many astronomers don't believe the hostile planet could support life. Its temperatures are high enough to melt lead, water is scarce, and the atmospheric pressure is far greater than Earth's. Nevertheless, the USSR's contribution to Venus research is significant. While focusing on Mars wasn't impossible, it was more expensive than sending probes to Venus. The distance from Earth to Venus is about 40 million kilometers, while Mars is around 250 million kilometers away. These differences in distance mean significant cost differences. If the U.S. hadn't been the world's largest economy, it might never have explored Mars so easily. Several reports suggest that Soviet missions faced significant technical challenges, and their rockets often lost contact. This likely explains why the Soviet space program chose a more practical, closer mission that could yield results. The U.S. wasn't even in the space race when the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1 in 1957, the first artificial satellite. This move kicked off the space race. The U.S. focused on the Moon, rather than Venus, partly because of repeated failures with Venus missions in the 1960s. Every probe launched by NASA toward Venus failed, leading to what was dubbed the Venus Curse. This is when the Soviet Union saw an opportunity to outshine NASA. During the Cold War, both the U.S. and the USSR were determined to win the space race. The Soviet Union's strategic focus on Venus was a calculated move to maintain dominance over the U.S. Despite limited resources and political challenges, they repeatedly launched missions to Venus. The Venera missions, though largely forgotten today, were sophisticated and groundbreaking. Throughout the 1950s, the Soviets tested designs and technology for interplanetary probes, and over the next 30 years, they continued launching spacecraft as part of the Venera program. This relentless effort was driven by the geopolitical climate of the Cold War. Their early success gave them a technological advantage, allowing them to build powerful rockets and advance instrumentation for Venus missions. In 1966, Venera 3 became the first probe to enter Venus's atmosphere and land on its surface, intensifying the space race. While the U.S. struggled, the Soviet program continued to progress. Despite challenges, the Soviets managed to send multiple successful probes into Venus's atmosphere. This early success laid the foundation for future interplanetary exploration and contributed significantly to space history. The Soviet Venera missions of the 1970s and 1980s marked the pinnacle of their efforts in Venus exploration. The simultaneous launches of Venera 4 and Venera 5 were among their most notable achievements, designed to collect atmospheric data and provide crucial information about the planet's surface. These missions were far ahead of their time, demonstrating the Soviet Union's ability to conduct interplanetary exploration with limited resources and technology that often outpaced even that of NASA. The Venera program's milestones. Each subsequent Venera mission improved upon the last. Venera 7, launched in 1970, became the first spacecraft to successfully transmit data back to Earth from the surface of another planet, albeit for a brief 23 minutes before succumbing to Venus's extreme conditions. Venera 9 and 10, launched in 1975, sent back the first images of Venus's surface, revealing a rocky, barren landscape and providing the world with its first glimpse of Earth's sister planet. Venera 13 and 14, launched in 1981, represented the pinnacle of Soviet engineering. They were equipped with advanced cameras and instruments to analyze soil composition and atmospheric properties. The missions captured color images and sounds, giving scientists unprecedented insights into Venus's environment. Despite the hostile conditions, these probes operated on the surface for over an hour, far longer than any previous attempts. Why Venus? The focus on Venus was strategic for several reasons. As previously mentioned, the planet's proximity to Earth made it a more cost-effective target. Additionally, Venus presented a unique scientific challenge. Its thick, toxic atmosphere and extreme temperatures offered a chance to develop technologies that could withstand harsh environments, an opportunity for the Soviets to showcase their engineering prowess. Success on Venus meant proving their superiority in space exploration, despite the country's limited economic and political resources. The legacy and impact. The Venera missions laid the groundwork for modern planetary exploration. The data collected helped scientists understand the greenhouse effect, atmospheric pressure, and the composition of Venus's surface. These findings have implications not only for understanding Venus, but also for studying climate change and atmospheric dynamics on Earth. Despite their achievements, the Soviet Union's contributions to Venus exploration remain relatively obscure compared to NASA's lunar missions or Mars rovers. This is partly due to the USSR's secretive nature and the geopolitical tension of the Cold War. Many of their findings were classified, And only after the Soviet Union's collapse did the full extent of their accomplishments come to light. Venus today, a renewed interest. In recent years, there has been renewed interest in Venus. NASA and other space agencies, including Roscosmos and ESA, are planning new missions to explore the planet. The discoveries made by the Soviet Venera program provide a foundation for these future missions. Advances in technology now allow for more sophisticated probes capable of withstanding Venus's harsh conditions for longer periods, potentially revealing new insights about the planet's past and its potential for habitability. Conclusion: the story of the Venera missions is a testament to human ingenuity and the relentless pursuit of knowledge. The Soviet Union's focus on Venus, driven by a combination of scientific curiosity and geopolitical strategy, resulted in some of the most significant achievements in space exploration. While much of their work remains underappreciated, the legacy of the Venera program continues to influence our understanding of Venus and inspires ongoing exploration. As we look to the future, with new missions on the horizon, the lessons learned from the Soviet Union's pioneering efforts will undoubtedly play a crucial role. Venus, once dismissed as an inhospitable planet of judgment, may still hold secrets that could reshape our understanding of the solar system and our place within it.